Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're like me and you do woodworking quite often, you know that the table saw is the heart of your shop. But there are some things that hobbyist woodworkers just take for granted. I'm going to show you my 5 top tips that I always employ before I turn on my table saw. Before we get into the tips, if you guys haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you're notified whenever I post new video content. I'm going to try and do this a lot more in the future, so having that notification is the most important thing right now that you can possibly do for me. Throw a like on this video. Let's see if we can get it up to 500 likes. That would be great. Throw me a comment down below if you have any comments, tips, or suggestions that you want to share. So, let's go over there. Now my number 5 tip, and it's kind of a blanket tip over all these other tips that are going to be mentioned in this video. Number 5 is to never take the settings of your table saw for granted. I know you've probably taken the time, maybe last week, 6 months ago, a year ago, and you've checked the table saw fence to make sure that it's perpendicular to the tabletop, parallel with the miter slot, and even taking the time to check the blade for those 2 settings as well. But over time, or even the course of a project, the jarring motion of either kickback or wood being slid across the tabletop into the fence, or just general wear and tear of maybe the nylon pads that keep this fence aligned, over time that stuff will become out of alignment and you will need to reset. So between every project, after you clean your shop and everything's ready to go for the next project, take a little bit of time, whether it be an hour or 30 minutes or whatever, and check the settings of your saw. You're going to use this thing a lot. So if anything is out of alignment, your project's not going to come together the way you want. So that leads me into number 4 tip, check the fence alignment. Fence is probably the easiest thing to check and the quickest. It doesn't require a lot of micro gauges, even though if you have them and want to use them and want that dead-on accuracy, great. Go ahead and employ them with the checking of it. But for people like me that don't have any of those things, I simply use a right angle gauge or a speed square. The first thing that I do is to make sure that it's parallel with the miter slot. Easiest way to do that is to slide it over to your miter slot, tighten it up, making sure that this back corner over here closest to you is even with that slot. And then just simply run your finger down the slot, feeling for inconsistencies. Maybe the fence is pinching towards the blade a little bit too much as you go through, or it's drifting away. You want that to be as close to parallel as you possibly can get it. And I can feel right now that I have a slight inconsistency, but I did that on purpose. It's not by much. It's maybe 1/122nd of an inch difference that I'm feeling right now. And I did that because whenever I push my wood through, I want just a slight little pitch away from the blade. And like I said, 1/128th of an inch. So I don't run the risk of any wood being pinched on the blade as it goes through. So if I have some wood that's going to go through the blade and maybe the tension's being released as I'm cutting it, if I have it perfectly parallel but the wood pushes itself towards the blade, I'm going to get kickback. Really, really bad. Having the fence pitched slightly away from the blade will help alleviate some of the tension that's going to be released as you're pushing your wood through and give you less risk of kickback. That's just a little tip that I learned from New Yankee Workshop many years ago, and I still employ it today. Now, the second thing that I do is take a speed square and I set it up on the table saw. I don't really set it up on my tabletop over here. I do it on the cast iron surface, and the easiest way is just to get down eye level and see if you see daylight, and if you do, you might have a problem. So you have to fix this problem right now before you start your next project, because inaccuracies will inevitably happen. Now, if you don't have the micro adjustment screws to raise or lower the fence to bring it into square, you can just take some high grit sandpaper like 600 or 1200 and just do a light sanding on those nylon pads. This way it will take some layers off but keep it smooth so it drags across your fence guide nicely. Now that you've taken great care to make sure that the fence is running parallel with the miter slot and perpendicular to the table, you can check your blade using the fence as your aid. Now the way I accomplish this is to take a 1/2 inch brass setup bar and use it as my feeler gauge between the blade and the fence. I measure it between one tooth of the blade, making sure that it does not wobble back and forth between the blade and the fence. Then I check that same tooth at the back exit point of the blade and the fence, checking for the same wobble. Now, if you have set your fence slightly pitched away from the blade on the back end, you might have a tiny bit of give versus the front of the blade. If you have a problem with the fence pinching at the back side of the blade, that is something you need to address right now. You know that the fence is running parallel to the miter slot, so if you've got a pinching problem at the back of the blade, then your blade is out of alignment in the setup of the trunnion underneath the table saw. That is something you will need to check your owner's manual to adjust. Now with that set, just make sure that your blade is perpendicular to your table by raising it up as high as it will go, and then take you a small right angle gauge, whether it be a speed square or an adjustable square like this one, and then put it up to the blade, making sure that it's touching just the body of the blade and not a carbide tooth, because that'll throw your alignment off as well. Man, these tips are just flying by. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, click that like button. Let's see if we can get this thing up to 500 likes. That would be great. So let's go on to the next tip. Tip number 3 is probably the most overlooked when it comes to hobbyist woodworkers, and they mainly have that mentality because they don't feel like they're doing enough woodworking to dull their blades. Unfortunately, the inverse effect of that. What is the most common material that hobbyist woodworkers tend to do or make projects out of? Pine, unfortunately, part of its genetic makeup has pitch. And pitch is just something you're never going to be able to get away from. And as you push a 100% pine project through these saw blades, that pitch deposits on the teeth, causing it to give that dull feel. Now, it doesn't mean your blade needs sharpening. It just means you need to clean the blade. Now, there will be times that you may have to send your blades out for sharpening, especially if you're cutting things like pecan, walnut, or teak. You need to find a reputable person that can sharpen those blades, especially if you're using blades like I do, which are Freud. Freud has specific specs on their blades that sharpeners must adhere to, otherwise those blades aren't going to work like they did come straight from the factory. Now, tip number 4 is TLC. All your tools, including your table saw, especially cast iron top tools, are going to need some TLC. And if you take care of your tools, they will take care of you. So making sure that they are in tip-top shape and looking like new and running like new will pay you dividends. The table saw top is probably one of the most vulnerable areas for problems. And if you live in a high humidity area, you might start to develop surface rust on the saw top. And surface rust is a woodworker's nightmare because it creates friction with your pieces that you're sliding across, causing you to kind of give it a lot of elbow grease just to get it across the tabletop. So you need to clean that surface rust off. The easiest way I have found to go about doing that is spraying a liberal amount of WD-40 on the cast iron top, letting it set just a few minutes, and then taking a Scotch-Brite pad and a random orbit sander to give you some elbow grease help. Just sand the top with that pad. That will remove any surface rust that has accumulated on the saw top, giving you a nice clean surface. Now, if you have some pitting issues, you will probably need to use a product that will be able to go in those areas and clean that rust out. I found a product pretty recently called Metal Rescue, and it's a rust remover gel that I can actually paint on in areas that might have some embedded rust that I can't get out on the surface. Once you have a clean tabletop, then just take some Johnson's Paste Wax or anything that is going to give you a friction coefficient of 0 or as much to 0 as you can possibly get. You can wipe that on the tabletop and then buff it. Not to mention, if you have jigs that you use on a table saw, put that wax on those jigs. So when you have wax to wax, it slides super, super smooth, and you get a nice slick surface with every piece of wood that you push across. Now, for the Patreon tips.
Alert, if you are interested in all of these tips, then become a patron. This will give you 24-hour access viewing of this video, plus any extra tips that you won't find anywhere on YouTube.
So that brings us to the last tip of the day. Tip number 1. I know you've been waiting for it. Tip number 1 is basically you don't have to buy expensive to buy the accuracy. I have been working on a 10-inch Delta contractor's table saw. Not a cabinet saw, a contractor saw. I think you can get a contractor saw for about $650, $700. So highly recommend doing your research on saws before you buy, because not all contractor saws are made the same, just like not all cabinet saws are made the same. Well, I hope you were able to glean a little bit of information from those 5 tips. Those are the things that I employ the most between projects because I have to make sure that my shop is in tip-top shape every time I go to start a new project. I hope you patrons got some use out of the extra tips that I threw over on Patreon. And if you're not a patron of my Patreon campaign right now, all I ask is a simple $3 donation a month, and you get access not only 24 hours in advance to the video that I release that week, but you get extra tips that nobody on YouTube will have access to. So just an added benefit for you guys. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, hit the bell so you guys know when I post new content, and leave me a comment down below. Let me know how you like this. And hit the like button so we can get this up to at least 500 likes. That would be awesome. So thank you very much. I will see you guys on the next video. Boom!